Armchair Generals. This is Gamer 1745 here. And we're going to be playing some Strategic Command World War I. We're seeing if Germany can win World War I here. In the game, I do believe it's quite possible. Late start, and yes, hello Arno, because I'm left my secret mountain base, and I'm on my real computer, so getting things logged in there is, so I'm seeing yes. Okay, we are live on both platforms. So yes, we're continuing here. Boy, okay, it's good to be home. It's whatever. Yes, right. So, current situation, it is February 23rd, 1918, and Germany is in Belgium and France, not being pushed back. They've lost a bit of territory in Austria, but they're pushing back there, or I should say the Central Powers. They've completely cleaned out Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, all the way down to the tip of Greece, which is something they didn't do in World War I. The Russians have pushed deep into Turkey, I would say, but are struggling, and the Turks are struggling to push them back out. So it's a struggle in both directions. They are holding in, what was the term for this back then? That's interesting. So now it's called Palestine after the British got it. What did the Turks call it? That's I don't know the answer there. Continue to pound on that. You did see the hello Arno on Twitch. Are you there generally still? Push there, even with the Germans and the Bulgarians. Okay. All right, we will move these guys down here and entrench. Into the entrenchment, yes, maybe, yes, or yes, maybe, or yes. And test, yes, I see you over on YouTube. That is great. Unlike historically, the British did well in pushing into Iraq, taking Baghdad and pushing on. But it took them a bit of effort. We've fallen back on the cities here, and hopefully they're having a bit of supply trouble, but we're not doing great either. Okay, let's bring up the artillery here. Plus that out to max, so that artillery is pretty good. These guys can upgrade here, so, or not upgrade, but reinforce. Looks close enough, sort of. We'll get one that's closer to the front line. So we're holding in Iraq. Now, on the Eastern Front, well, importantly, Romania has remained neutral. Is very useful to us. We just have a few forces, Bulgarian forces, watching the Romanian border. And we pushed into Russia. Russia is starting to have its revolution. How do I put this? One thing I should have been doing, and haven't, and we've been suffering from it here, is spend all these massive amounts of MPP on the Austrian Navy. So let's get these guys. Yeah. Um, revolutions, as far as I can tell, are never a good idea. And you may go, never, gamer, never? Yes, never. There's definitely people on the left that think a revolution is good because revolution is generally considered a leftist thing. And they try to promote it. On the right, if you can sort of call it that, there are people that are fed up, heavily fed up with government. And they want to throw the bums out, as it were, would be a good way of looking at it, I would say. And they often call for, I don't know how much they mean it, but they at least sort of sound like they do, call for a revolution as well. Not a revolution to bring about the people's proletariat, but to, you know, move the government a bit more or a lot more to the right. You know, use the word, throw the globalist out, you know, get rid of the globalists. That's never a good idea. A revolution is never a good idea. Now, there is a difference between a revolution and a revolt. Okay? And there's a big difference between that. And this is what a lot of people, I think, mistake. A revolt for a revolution. And so and I would basically dare anybody to name me a revolution that worked out well. And before the Americans come in and go, the American Revolution. Well, you know what? Hey, new IKB. How do I put this? If there's a two-wheeled motor vehicle out in front, and I point to it, that's my car. No, it's a motorcycle. Oh, but you called it a car, so it must be a car. No, a car has four wheels. You know, so just because you call something a thing doesn't make it necessarily the thing that you're calling it. And since IKB, the new IKB is here, I liked using the term that I learned many years ago in British wargaming magazines, the American War of Independence. And I think that's a great name for it, because largely the people that were in charge at the beginning of the war are the same people in charge in the society, not the particular office holders in some cases, because some colonies, think like New Jersey, but I can be wrong, was something like a royal appointment for governor. But in other places, the governor was like locally elected, not whether it was through voting maybe or through the local legislature or something like that. So they did throw out some people, of course, but it was largely a stable society. It was a war of independence. It wasn't really a revolution. And this terminology is why there was a you, or do we want to move you? So yeah, the use of the term revolution there is more mistaken than correct. See, IKB says the American Revolution was more of an English Civil War to oceanic boogaloo than a revolution in the French style. Well, and I think yes, you're mentioning the French Revolution, but you have historically some, but you got to really sort of look back to antiquity to have revolutions that are overthrowing the current social, economic, governmental order with a new one. And that's what we mean by sort of revolutions. And Britain tried to have a few of those, and I can't really name them, but there was a few leveling, which often we term revolts because they don't succeed, but that, and I'm thinking in the medieval period, sort of peasant revolutions, if you will, that were, had they been successful, at least in their claims, often things don't work out that way, but would overthrow not a particular king for a different king, but overthrow the kings and the nobility and whatever, and create, not, as far as my professor in English history, and again, I don't remember all the names of these different revolts or revolution attempts, were not communists in form at all, but were leveling, in which, to one degree or another, making everyone sort of equal, but without big government, big socialist government, if you understand. There would be sort of, in a way, you get to keep what they saw as your own stuff, in that the land that you worked, because it was often peasants, city people were sometimes involved and sometimes not, but keep what you sort of owned / worked as you saw it, and get rid of the landlords, if you will, the idea of the renters. So the peasants would own the land that they farm, kind of thing, and smallholders. So those definitely existed prior to the French Revolution, and obviously have existed later. So that's the basic difference there, but yes. So when you talk revolution, I'm entirely thinking the idea of overthrowing the social order as much as overthrowing particular individuals. Arno is waiting. Oh, no, not Arno, sorry. The IKB is waiting for the Automobile Association. Yes, I had that experience once in Britain too, having to wait for them. And I've had experiences like that even very recently in the United States. But yes, car. So I hope everything goes well. Glad you have AA coverage. IKB, that will definitely help with that. So we see when I posted over on our Discord forum, hey guys, I know there are a few people that are here with me. Hi you all. Probably already know, but we do have a Discord server. I don't know if Arno wants to dig up a link for that and post it, particularly in. Cause I think the link is up in the description for Twitch, but maybe on YouTube. You mean Bofers, right? Right? Yeah. So this looks like maybe a good spot to attack. Okay, we have that right. We got fighters that are somewhat upgraded, so we will reconnaissance bomb here. Do some damage as well. We will then, now that we know exact location of the positions, we will start firing some artillery here. I don't know that we need to fire anymore. Yeah, that's fine. Swap these two out and take that out. There we go. Thank you, Arno. So you can join us there, and I posted one of actually a newer version than I'd seen before, at least that I had seen, saying words to the effect. I know the world looks scary right now, but it's going to get a whole lot worse. Yes, we are seeing populist revolts in many countries right now. Why can't you don't have the supply 5? Okay. I would have thought rail links to there would have been good. Okay, well, we are going to see about hitting that. Now we can do some good without a real cost to us. That is nice. These guys we can, just mobility. Okay. Refill that position. I don't even know them. Well, I don't know if it's just me. Let me check over here. Just me. Let me check over here. Yeah, there's no over on Discord. It doesn't have the link. Arno. for the Discord for some reason. Don't know why. Does it not want to give you permission to put links up? I don't know. Because I don't know, did I remove and re-add you back as... Because I think there's a problem with your account or something on YouTube, Arno. I don't know. The link is in chat. I went and looked at the YouTube link or YouTube chat, and I don't see the link. Maybe it's in the description. Maybe I should put it there if I don't already. No, I don't have it there. Okay. Well, you can find it around. Sorry. So, because we're looking at Nepal. Well, lots of countries around have recently, in the last year or two, I think Sri Lanka, Ceylon, however you want to say that, is having its own, or had its own sort of revolts. Did it work now? No. We got to play with that a bit more. Okay, we don't want to attack the tank. That would be successful, but bloody. We've got 3 artillery rounds. We've got fighter. Do we want to go after that? Okay, there's our fighter corps, which will give us an escort. Let's concentrate. All right. Well, it showed up just fine on Twitch, but I'm looking at the YouTube chat. Hey, General Sorrow. Yeah, I don't know if I ever made you okay, that's much better. Unmade you a moderator and then remade it. I know that was the plan. I re-added you back. So, we have 4 action points, and this is going to take 3, so we should be able to come in now and build, or actually rotate, shift around. I think this will survive well enough. I hope so. We are we don't really have enough organization to attack that one as well. Yeah, well, your count is listed as that, but for me, Arno, your icon is just an A. Yeah, a brown A for Arno. In the account that is listed for you as a moderator, it is actually a graphical image. So it makes me think, even though they both say Arno Boers, that there's 2 different YouTube accounts with some sort of name that way. And hello, Mirror Man, how you doing? Yeah, I think this great game is especially the the version of, or some of the scenarios that are daily, I think are great. Okay. Now, on the Western Front. That looks like a possibly very good attack. That does not. We don't need to attack the tank, I hope. So, we are, okay, well, we have new units here, and there we are, unit fighter. Okay. Germany gets tanks. Okay. Hey, Crouchy. Reading a book about World War I. Yeah. Okay. No spoilers. Our turn. It looks. No, this is February 23rd, 1918. Mirror Man. So we are well into the war. Yeah. Well, I'm going to need you to help make sure that I'm modding back in, or making the moderator the right account. Okay, we'll get back to adding people here. I really like this game, but the idea that artillery is taking up a whole hex and they can't stack, aircraft can't stack with infantry. I get the idea that these cores need a certain amount of space. Alternative Earth, yes. Okay, so let's put this will allow us to reinforce this. Get that. Okay, right. We will do that. And then we will out there. You can come into here and hopefully not take that out. You can't retreat. Okay, well, that's lovely. But I think we can swap you out. Yes. Okay, good. So that's still a 9 strength unit there, and we've killed off. And you're down to that. All right, good. Not that you're down, but artillery barrage is here. Well dug in there, I guess. These guys, maybe not so much. So since these guys aren't so much dug in, I think yeah, sit down there. Well, first, because we have aircraft, I think that we'll escort it. Let's actually hurt them some. Then we're going to use our railway guns and bombard the position. To come over here and these 2 barrages. Okay, so mud is keeping us from going too far back there, so we will swap these guys out here. These guys will attack. Swap these guys out here. There we go. So we've got rid of 3 cores. or shattered 3 cores so that they're going back and need to be reorganized. I may have asked Arno saying, I'm sorry, but is there a way you can get the Netherlands involved in this game? Well, I could invade the Netherlands. That's very doable. That'd get them involved. I can, with diplomacy, they are right now 8% in favor of the Central Powers. USA is hovering at 50%. Romania is steady at 20%, or for there, and Romania is at 20%. Portugal is at 77% to move towards the Entente here, or an Entente member, so that they very well may show up very soon. Now, there is a warning at the beginning of the game that the Dutch are supplying you, particularly with food and a lot of other imports that they import. And if I'm not mistaken, and I very well could be, but I think the British were inspecting Dutch ships, meaning they would come along, it would demand Dutch merchant vessels allow inspectors come on them at times. To look for war materials, that type of thing. But they could import food, they could import certain resources, I believe, and then they could re-export those resources to Germany. So having the Dutch as a neutral for the Central Powers is a positive. So you don't necessarily want to get the Dutch into the war. You want to keep them happy, keep them neutral. So that's a thing to be aware of with this. Title gives away with can. Right. Okay, so now do we want to push here? These guys have been, okay, so we'll do this. Rotate these guys to the front and those guys to the back to get reinforced. So now we've gotten rid of 4 cores. And again, these are designed in this way because it's easier to rebuild units than build new units. Cheaper and quicker. Okay. I still wanted to see what I could do about getting some of these forces here. Okay, that will now allow me to drop the tanks. Oh, no, yeah, right here. Well, maybe I should have put them on the Eastern Front. Might have actually done better on the Eastern Front. I'm not sure on that. Okay, cavalry, with its mobility, I think on the Eastern Front it is a better idea. Okay. Flying every which way, yes. Battles in the tulip fields. I don't think we're going to do too much more here. And so I am playing an attrition war with this game, but I'm trying to fight it smartly. Okay, oh shit, it's Austrian. We're not putting it into a port because all my ports are full right now. Well, except for that one, but that one might be attacked. So we're not going to deploy that. You don't have to deploy these forces. Okay, before I decide to try to... we have 4 action points, and yeah, let's move you up to here and entrench. You come up now. You rear. We're just going to entrench here. Having the Russians in here is not the most terrible thing in the world. It'd be particularly good for us, but it's just distracting and holding the front. Okay. With that being said, I think down here is more important for the Turks. We will put you here. Leave you undeployed. Leave you waiting. Okay. I guess we can go for seaplane. Because Turks don't really have much MPP to things. Germany has the MPP to a degree. Okay, we can. Let's get ground attack bombers. Attack weapons, see if we can afford all this. And long range aircraft so that it's flexible. Right, okay. I think we can also afford more recon bombers. Let's do a detachment. There we go. We're going to save the rest for reinforcements or other needs or for future turns. Yeah, that's entrenched. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure it was entrenched. Let's swap these two out so that we can upgrade to better infantry weapons. You cannot upgrade, like these guys cannot upgrade because they're next to an enemy unit. Get better. Let's move you down here. Continue to upgrade some of these forces. They moved around too much this turn. Okay. Yeah, this is, that started, yes, 1914. I started this back then. Baghdad Oriental, I checked setting. Okay. Let me make a save here. Put a screen out of destroyers. Actually, to deal with submarine. We decided to prepare you. We wanted to see about using PP here to go for advanced. To advanced subs. Let's max you out. You are upgraded. You there. From bumping into anybody. Okay, so we've got subs who are trying to break out into the Atlantic past all of these destroyers. So let's see if I get you guys out into the Atlantic. Yes. Okay, now we've determined a safe path. There we go. Sound gets annoying after a while. Okay, you. Well, let's come way up here. So I think that is all of our subs that we move. Okay. We've done purchasing. Let's go to research, particularly for the Austrians, because they have the extra points here. That's good. We don't want to just get all of this used up here. Okay, time to give the Entente its turn. Okay, the Bolsheviks in Finland are gaining strength and threatening to overthrow the forces of law and order led by General Mannerheim. Major General von der Goltz therefore proposes to lead an expedition to Finland to assess Mannerheim's forces in battle against the Reds, but sending it will cost us 75 MPP. We have 282 at the moment. With Mannerheim securely in control of Finland, we would be then be able to commence trading with that country. Therefore, economic benefits in the long run could outweigh the initial cost of the expedition. Would you like to authorize it? I think we can afford this, so yeah, we'll do this. General von der Goltz and Mannerheim defeat Bolshevik forces in Finland. Very good. General Haller's Polish Blue Army is formed in France. Now, this is interesting. French workers strike for better conditions. Don't see. Oh, check mark. Oh, yes. For General Sorrow there. Germany develops long-range aircraft level 2. Austro-Hungary aerial warfare level 1. Now there was, and we can see here, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, food supplies via neutral Netherlands is 65 MPP per turn. Arno. So that is very important to us to keep them neutral. National minorities, if you will, or ethnic minorities or whatever, were an interesting thing during the war. And I read about, I think it was the book Hitler's Compromises. If it was that book, I highly recommend it. Either way. But it talked about how during World War I, Germany sets up a puppet state in what is today Poland. Not necessarily the full territory of what is today Poland, definitely, because a lot of Poland has moved into what had been German Empire with just a with a significant amount of Poles living in it, but had fairly long been German Empire, especially East Prussia, which was more all German. But and this was to get local populace cooperation. It was to try to, I think, raise some, maybe not so much frontline units, but raise internal security type units or whatever in Poland. So, and we just saw a Polish unit being formed in France. Now, I can tell you when. Oh shit, that's awfully weak there. We got to swap them out. It was wrong for this game to create a Polish unit in France. And the reason I'm saying that is, historically, I think it happened. I mean, I'm unlike World War II. I am, a novice, if you will, on knowing the history of World War I. Like I know it very well in World War II. But by, I think, about March 1918, much of Poland was under German occupation. But in this game, Warsaw here is still under a Russian occupation. I almost said Soviet. And so is Ivangorod and Brest-Litovsk and whatever. So there's still a lot of Polish territory being occupied by the Russians. So I doubt the Russians would be terribly in favor of. Hopefully Metz holds. Metz does not hold, but can they occupy it? Maybe they can. Maybe they can. So I'm going with that was a scripted event that should have conditions of like Warsaw being held by the Central Powers or some such thing. Ouch. Ouch. Yeah, oh, shattered, yes. I figured that was going to happen. Shattered. Oh boy, the French in Italy, not the Italians, the French in Italy are doing pretty good work there. Okay. Yeah. Oh. Oh. So our push there was a mistake. We got the old Bohemian War wagon running again. Very good. Yeah, Tuesday, of this last week. Oh, maybe we can take it back. if we push real hard, real fast. I was running around doing errands up at my secret mountain base, and the French have 2 tanks now. Wow. Or 2 tank units. Yeah. I was at the post office, and I get back in my car, and just flat, no electricity. And so I fiddled around with it for a little while, and nope, nothing. So I called the AAA here, which I'm a member of, and they took them about an hour, and they got there. And the guy found that and I had looked at the battery, but the attachment to battery was not making contact on the ground line. So it was not working. And I had changed the battery, and this is my fault. I had changed the battery just like 2 weeks before and didn't tighten it, screw tighten it down enough to make sure it made contact, and it was sort of a jank connection anyways. So it was my fault, and he got it tightened down. And yeah, he sort of, with the description on his way there, he figured what it was. French cylinder taking a Metz. So that was my fault for the car not, or the van not running right. Very glad your car is running. So sometimes it can be something very simple. Back against conscription. Central powers, turn 10, or turn and 10 turns remaining. Okay, so we're counting down to the end of this. Okay, cancel this, and we're going to save. Yay. Now we'll see when we get to the end of this what the game evaluates as. Oh boy. I think you guys, well, I don't need long range aircraft as much as I need you fully powered up. This is very bothersome. Okay. Can't move to there, right where I want to move to? Okay, let's... We're going to move you there, which means I can't upgrade you. We're going to now do this. Here, right? You normally don't want to do this because they come in low readiness, but I think the tank unit will survive any French attacks there. French. Okay, well. So we're going to have the tanks there. Put you there, so we'll have some artillery next turn to blast the hell out of Metz. Okay, well, hopefully we're going to see about distracting. Okay, we don't have any fighter coverage, so what can we upgrade? Long-range aircraft. Okay, that will give us more flexibility. I'll pay for that. Okay, we have 6 shells, so even but heavy damage. not have the benefits of artillery. Well, we do have that artillery. Oh, they have well, isn't that special? I don't think this is going to work out as well as I'd hoped. Okay. Weaken down here to deal with this. Well. Don't need. I like mobility, but we don't. Let's these out here. It'd be too easy for them to come in and attack from there. I'm going to try to hold here still. Even if I can't entrench, we are going to move up there. Okay, see you, General Sorrow. Thank you for hanging out with us. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do? Just get these guys out of the theater for now. Heat up too much, and then we're going to upgrade out. We still have 3 rounds there, so let's fire barrages. And boom, got 2 cores. The Italian side. That is a good thing. You will be able to get reinforced. Down here. Commerce rating. The British and the Italians. No. Disappear out into the water. The sea. Okay. We're going to change your status over to hunting. And you also onto that line there. Here. 5 shells. Well, let's fire 5 shells at these guys. Now this is just a detachment, but this force here is readiness 33%, morale 1%. So let's attack it. Ah, we took damage too. Took more damage and nothing. Okay, well, you guys look like we can come up here and we'll attack again. No effect. Okay, but no damaging effect for us. Force. I think a holding action is good enough for the force march down here. Just get them into the area. I guess I could have SR'd them in. Well. Weapons where we can. Not in contact with the enemy. Do a little bit of pushing eventually here. Okay. French. I think that's good. No, out here. We've got 8 shells. These fighters need. It's a reinforcement. I think taking that out would be best first. Yes. So. And since we had good weather, we can use our mobility to move up and retire. Retreat, fall back. Okay, we'll risk it with this detachment. Position. Okay, unless they have a lot of forces to move up. I don't think they'll kill that unit. I hope not. Far from shore. Let's quickly see what we can reinforce along this front here. All of these guys. Upgraded, or not upgraded, but reinforced as strong as possible. Okay. So, new units. We still have the Austrian destroyer that well, okay, an Ottoman Corps. Well, got those guys coming down here. Got these guys out here. Holding okayish here. I'm more worried about down here still. So let's deploy purchasing, as they call it. I would call it more training or equipping or something. Previous settings were. Fighters, we could use more fighters. Okay, a core, yes, detach is. Yeah, we can bring that back. We can use more fighters on the Western Front or other places, so. All right. Well, I think we're pretty good for reinforcements. Oh, Navy. Okay, well, before we do the Navy, I'm going to save again. Again, it's not so much for die rolls that I don't like. It's for misclicks and whatnot. Red means it's hiding or trying to do its best to hide. So we're going to come here. Put on the Russian supply lines. You're out to sea. Okay, so we still have our destroyer screen up here, controlling a good portion of. We have the 2.15 MPP. Advanced subs to level 2. We're working on that. Working on infantry warfare improvements, trench warfare, gas shell production, logistics. We could afford better fighters. Let's get that restarting research. And I think we'll also go for 75 MPPs and help our production capabilities. For Germany, over here we've got a lot going, and infantry weapons for the Turks. Yeah. These guys. Let's do it. We can put 50 that we can. Okay. Yeah. Sweden complains, yes, the Entente is sinking Swedish ships, particularly the Russians attempting to do so. Subs advanced to 100% for advanced subs. Now I can bring all my subs back and send them back out. Oh, yes. Well, Austria-Hungary develops trench warfare level 4. Scientists development of industrial technology. Scientists infantry weapons progress to almost 2% from being complete. You needed that. Ottomans, you needed that. Okay, on top, 10 turns remaining. So to me, victory for the Central Powers looks more like the Central Powers surviving. Historically, I'm not talking about in this game. The Central Powers surviving the war, not, well, once the war stabilizes. Early on, I can see, because I think it was a somewhat close thing that the French stopped the German advance on Paris. So, well, very good, Udo. How did they even see where that was? But once the war settles, to me, it's a the Central Powers survive the war, meaning Austro-Hungary, like it is doing, stays intact. It doesn't collapse. German army is continuing to do well and not being pushed back, um, controlling the Eastern Front. So the Turks not all falling apart. So we'll see how this game scores our victory or not. I don't think we'll take Paris. I was for a while thinking the French were ready to collapse because they had very few units, but the British came back pretty strong, and the French with their tanks have pushed us out of Metz. I'm hoping to get back into Metz, but we'll see. I was very close to thinking I was going to push, I don't know, take Paris, but push on Paris. But it's sort of become a bit of a stalemate again, I think. They have upgraded their infantry along with ours, and having 3 tank units on the Western Front makes them pretty hard to push in. We should swap out the German unit for the Turkish unit there. That is why we leave some, or some of the reasons why we leave some barrages not fully fired. Wow, that was devastating. Definitely why we need to swap out that if we can. I got some more units coming, but I don't need them pushing into me. Okay, they bumped into us, so we have a bit of an advantage there. Now there are a bunch of other Navy units to Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, is shot down and killed. Ottoman morale falls below 25%. Okay. They're doing pretty good. I don't know why their morale is falling. Okay, our empire morale has fallen dangerously low. To slow further decline, it would be advisable to transfer some of our military expenditure to civilian economy. It will cost us a turn. We, in return, gain 50 national morale points per turn to reset the war. Would you like? Yes, we'll do that. We have enough. And we won't deploy that just yet, and we will save. Okay, so we've saved here. Well, one thing we want to do here is swap these 2 units out. Yep. Okay, that stabilized the line fairly well, I think. Now, the big question is, can we get Mets? We have fighters. These guys, we are what? About their overall. Okay, let's recon bomb. Yes, we have supports here. We need as much. Oh, boy, man, that really kicked their guts out of them. I guess they are advanced on us. And we're going to use all 7 shells. Okay, so these guys are down to 50% readiness, 22% morale. Looking pretty good. So easy to be there. Okay, so we've retaken Met. That is very useful. Only minor damage. Hello, folk. Is Ludendorff the greatest World War I military theorist? I'm going to say I don't know, folk. I don't have enough good information on it. Ludendorff definitely was a nut job. he created a weird, maybe even more extreme than the Nazi party that was allowed to function for a while, even after the Nazis came to power, because of his one. It was sort of on the same side as the Nazis, and Ludendorff was a right-wing icon, so he was around, and I mean, and ends up being much. I think I don't know Hindenburg's. I mean, he's definitely a conservative German politician once he gets into power, but I don't know how much he shares agreement with Ludendorff's weird sort of party. It was a small a small fraction of the um, electorate, but may have been out of all of Germany getting a couple 100,000 votes or something. Um, Published a magazine, so I know that of him, but I just don't know enough about the other German general theorists, because you said theorists and not, um, and I'm thinking significant ones active in theory during World War One, because you have all the theorists that develop after World War One coming out of it. People like Rommel famously, but Guderian and others that were officers. You have Little Hart and the other British guy, I'm blanking on the name right now, with their theories coming out of the post World War One. So I'm figuring you're not trying to include them. So I'm going to plead ignorance. I'd rather plead ignorance when I know I'm ignorant than try to make claims. Claims and seeming to know things. Okay, we have these guys here. We've got 6 artillery rounds, so we're going to put all 6 on top of these French guys. I'd like to take this position back. I'm not going to force it if it's too dismal. It's not looking too dismal. No, we didn't take it back, but they were at least well shaken up. At the start of this stream, I was talking about revolutions and how they're never a good idea. And I definitely broke out revolts are different than revolutions. Even successful revolts are different than revolutions. And I know that many of you who are here are often viewers. Know that I've talked about and coming to the conclusion that World War I was the great tragedy of humanity, not World War II. Because the tragedy is not just how many dead bodies were produced in the war. but the loss of societies that it caused. And I know there's a big controversy in historiography. I think that would be the correct term, particularly in Britain, about the use of the term Dark Ages and how it's politically incorrect, and to a point of, if you use the term of Dark Ages, being canceled within the history, to the within like history departments and funding and whatever else, to a point. What is Dan Snow, I think is his name, or was that his father's name? I don't know. Wouldn't call it the Dark Ages on the trigonometry podcast that he was on, and how he pushed back against it, even though he was sort of kind of hinting that maybe he agreed that it was the Dark Ages. But it was sort of, oh, we now call it the early Middle Ages, and there's a bunch of controversy over that. And then the two people that run the trigonometry were like, what? They didn't even realize there was any of this controversy. I've realized it for some time. But no, it was the fucking Dark Ages. But to go, oh, look it, there was still Constantinople. Yeah, but Constantinople was, quite honestly, just a shadow of Rome. And, oh, look at all this jewelry we found and these other, fairly sophisticated stuff in there. He did, Dan Snow, I think. Is that his father's name or his name? I don't remember. Because his father has passed, but his father was also a historian on television, and a rather good one. And Dan has definitely, although he was coming off as not being too left in his viewpoints, he was more describing English history and how the English were formed as a people. But there was some comments about modern stuff as well. Maybe not as left as I was thinking he was, and maybe because he's on the British television, he has to pretend to be further left than he was, or or is, or whatever. But it's not just the collapse of the Roman Empire that happens with the Dark Ages. Oh, and he does admit that it's very dark in seeing about the history of that time period, and that there's very, very little recorded history. And people I respect and are educated often misuse the word history as simply the past. History is the written word, people. Now, we will expand it into the various recorded word, or recorded deeds, I would also add, as in, radio or audio, and then visual, which would be photographs, movies, things that leave a record, a real-time film of a bombing of Britain, or the recovery from the bombs, or a real-time interview, at the time of people during World War II, on motion pictures, is history. And looking at a photograph is history. When you're looking at physical objects, basically it's archaeology to one degree or another. And you may find some other terms. So there is prehistory. It doesn't mean that it's pre the past or whatever. It just means pre-written word. And, so they often will use history, the history of these people, blah, 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 and they're talking about what they don't know anything about, including sometimes archaeologists or others, because they're conflating archaeology with history. And archaeology depends a hell of a lot more on interpretation. Now, we do interpret, not necessarily just changing languages, from one language to another, but what words mean, over time and different cultures. Like during Korea, some American unit or commander or whatever checks in via radio with a British commander next to him, if you will. And the British commander says something like, "Well, things are getting a bit sticky over here." "Oh, well, good. Yeah, we'll keep fighting over here." And so they don't send any reinforcements, and a bit sticky in British terms, meaning it's fucking bad, and we're barely holding on. And so yes, um, often we will share the same language, but a bit sticky for a British commander means that things are maybe not quite dire, but things are hard going on. The troops maybe not quite desperate or something like that. But yeah, I could use some support, and a British commander would have realized the comment and what it meant at the time. So there is interpretation with the written word or other recorded means. But archaeology, there's a hell of a lot more. Okay, a hell of a lot more. So, looking at like the Dark Ages without a history in a lot of places, without recording what's going on, it is very dark. But what is really dark, and again, it's not just the fall of the Roman Empire and being early Middle Ages, it's something like 90 or 95% of literature, at least shall we say in what we'll call the Western world, though I want to include places like Persia and ancient Persia and Parthian Empire and all those type of Middle Eastern areas as well, not just in Europe. 90 to 95 or more percent of literature, and this is public, not letters between two people, but published works, is gone, irrevocably gone. That's to me a dark age. Okay, you lose human literature, and everything from poetry to history, if you will, and public proclamations by kings and republics and whatever. And so we lose so much of that it is the Dark Ages. Okay, it is an apocalyptic event. The world comes to an end. And we could say it, the Roman world, if you will, comes to an end. Because the Muslims, although they're often lauded for, oh, we recovered so much from the Muslims that gave us blah 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 blah, recovered Aristotle, they still destroy huge amounts of literature. So that was a great tragedy to humanity. World War I, we don't quite lose as much literature. I mean, sure, there's book burnings, and I'm also taking the aftermath, like the Russian Civil War and the Nazis rising and whatnot, and other things. But we lose because and folks as pointless or pointless is also tragic. All the belligerents agree with each other on most things. There was controversy whether late antiquity was a collapse or transition. No, it was a collapse. I will not. I mean, if you want to use the same two words, collapse and transition, because a collapse is a transition, yes, but it wasn't. The volume of artifacts dropped precipitously. People were no longer using pottery and other household goods. Absolutely. Or to some degree, you're very right. But I think some of the thought is that they were still making pots, but they weren't properly fired pots. They were sort of mud pots that were sort of kind of baked or something, and so they disintegrate. And so you go from the idea of trade, society, and all that stuff to just nothing. And and it's not just the Roman Empire collapsing. You also have fairly late in the game, but you have um, the plague that comes from the east via Constantinople into the west. You have deliberate destruction by the Christians on things that they see as religious or otherwise blasphemous, and destroying things. So deliberately. So you see various elements, as well as barbarians trying to destroy Christian things. It's not just Christians be bad, far from it. In my mind, at least. There is thought to be in the Taiping Rebellion in China, as many human lives were lost then in China as there was in the entirety of World War One. And that very well could be the case. And the Taiping Rebellion, what is around 1850 or so? 1850, 1860s. And there are other rebellions going on in China, which really more amount to civil wars, but that also killed many millions of Chinese. So, and you're definitely looking at belligerents agree with each other on most things. Well, this folk goes to what happened after World War One. The conflict becomes more about formulas and, of course, people are treated like cogs and formulas. If we just get the right formula for our, the right table of organization for our business, we will succeed. And we can plug, with moderate training, anybody can be put in any cog, in that formula. And it can be, whether it's business, any social organization. We just get the right social organization, whether it's political, business, whatever you want to say. If we just found the right, or economic, or, I don't mean economic as in business, I mean as in, communism, socialism, capitalism, mercantilism. If we just have the right formula, that's all we need, is the right formula. Fighting over formulas. Where I contend and I know just being sick and being away from all this, I sort of have to rethink some of this stuff. I contend we've lost the sense of community, the sense of shared identity within a community, if you will, or whatever, however you want to say this, which can definitely have religious, and I don't mean religion in the sense that, correct thinking people think this way about religion. That isn't the point. At least not my point. It's a shared belief, a shared common belief in why and how things work the way they do. Do you believe it rains because we all go out and pray for rain? Kind of thing. We make the right sacrifice to the right, ancient god or whatever, when it rains. Or, why does the world, universe work the way it does? And so within a community, whether it's the community of Dresden here at the center of this map, or some small town in this, what becomes known as the Sudetenland, the mountains around Czechoslovakia or Czechia or whatever you want to call it, a people with a shared sense of, the way the world works, if you will. We lose all of that. We lose the idea that if we were to implement capitalism in Italy, because Italy is such a corrupt culture, it's going to be fucked up. And I'm willing to, say this, and if there's any Italian viewers, oh, we've got a bot over on Twitch. I don't know if you want to go kill it. That, Italy is a corrupt culture. Italian culture is corrupt. I've recently read and heard about different movie productions that happen in Italy and just how much corruption to get anything done in Italy. I would never want to do any fucking business or anything with Italians. I don't mean Italian the individual, but they're going to bring their families. But in Italy, the way everything is corrupt. Everything, is get a family member working that isn't working but just paid, or where, well, if you don't hire the right people, we go on strike. It's just everybody is graft in corruption. So whether it's socialism or capitalism, Italy's fucked up economy. And so the character of the people, the character of the individuals matter. In my opinion, as much or more than the formula. Now, I know that in America, communism is despised. A lot of Americans, especially in the youth, have been indoctrinated into communism. But overall, it's despised. Because, and since, we always go back further and further and further, but at least I would say maybe in the 70s or something, they've been trying to, the left, the whatever, has been trying to Europeanize America. Europe looks so much better, so much better. We need to be more like the Europeans. And good Americans, good Americans, proper Americans, should have the opinion, Europeans are fucked up. Really, people, you are fucked up. And I know I'm speaking to Europeans. I'm saying this. And you can go, oh my God, we hate gamer now. Well, yeah. Have you met the French? Have you met the Germans? Have you met the Italians? Now, when you are them, you may not realize how fucked up you are. But you're fucked up. You look at the Russians. They did that whole communist Stalinist thing. Good, sensible Americans would never have gone for that. We can look at, basically in America, if you don't realize this, they've never taken away our guns. Left has only ever succeeded in keeping us from getting new guns by passing laws. So when they banned assault weapons for 10 years, they didn't ban assault weapons. I had my assault weapons. Nothing was banned with them. They banned new assault weapons, not previously existing assault weapons. In California, now mine have all been removed because I'm in the process of leaving, but they banned assault weapons in California. No, they didn't. What they did is they froze basically assault weapons in place. And if you legally registered your assault weapons in California, you got to keep them. You just didn't get new ones. Because they've always known that if they were going to really start coming around and trying to confiscate these things, any firearms, they were going to be lots of dead people. So Americans won't put up with you actually taking our guns. The Democrats have gotten enough power in places and times to, limit our acquisition of new firearms. but northern Italy is quite clean and rule abiding. Yes, and I do know as a as a variant, northern Italy is much better than southern Italy, and I know some of the reasons why this is. I mean, and knowing why things happen doesn't necessarily excuse why they happen. Why is Italy so corrupt? Well, Italy had, for a long, long time, at least the 17th and 18th centuries, and into the 19th century, Italy had been ruled by what they saw as foreigners, and particularly in southern Italy. And so being corrupt, if you will, was seen as an act of resistance from the rulers. And this was also sort of, I noted particularly in Nigeria, that people who could steal from the government, the British government, were thought of as positive people, even if they stole for their own, benefit, not Robin Hood types, steal from the rich. And it's wrong. Robin Hood doesn't steal from the rich and give to the poor. He steals from the Normans and gives to the Anglo-Saxons. It is much more of a war against the government, because the Normans are the government, not just ensure the government is rich, but it's more steal from the government, give to the people, would be appropriate Robin Hood translation into modern worry. But yeah, particularly the Bourbons were corrupt down in southern Italy, Naples, and then you had both French, or Bourbon French in northern Italy, as well as the Habsburgs ruling in large sections of northern Italy, which did transmit a certain amount of German culture up there to the Italians, but also were seen as foreigners. So yes, you have variations within Italy, but still, my understanding, it's still comparatively, northern Italy's corruption compared to, say, Germany's corruption is still much, much more corrupt in northern Italy than it is in, say, Bavaria. Paying off graft, bribes, special compensation to groups. You gotta hire cousin Luigi to do all your transport services if you want us to do whatever. That doesn't happen, to my knowledge, at least in Germany. It's much less corrupt there. So you Europeans are fucked up by the viewpoint of good viewpoint Americans. But they've been trying to Europeanize us, make us more and more dependent upon government. You could go back to Wilson as where this leftism sort of starts, but specifically trying to be more European, I would say, into the popular culture has been since the 70s. And so, you have these, this culture, what I say was lost in World War I. Cogs and formulas, where really the individual, and I will say the collective culture, not collectivism, but the collective culture, to me, matters as much or more than the formulas. And like I was saying, the collective viewpoint in a good culture would not be communist or communistical or whatever, because society runs well enough that communism is clearly seen as a bad, terrible thing. So, but if you were to try to implement and I want to state, and I use the term, there is a difference between communism and communalism with an L. Now, a commune, sometimes the left will use the word commune to refer to communist, but is a community that in and of itself is working as um, a coherent unit, if you will. Not that it has to be entirely leveling or entirely, everybody equal, everybody gets the same uh, amount of pay or whatever, but you see it as a commune, as a community, as uh, a whole that you can, and they can get pretty big, I'm sure, but you're not talking a commune of Russia. You're talking the commune of maybe just part of a town, a geographical, a county, whatever. You might get as big as that, but anything, but may function in what is otherwise a market society in which there's money and trading in between different communes or whatever. So there is a difference between there, but communism by a good cultured people will seen as not being a good thing. But so if we want to take it out of communism and try to look at it with something, whether you want to talk about mercantilism, capitalism, we need to come up with a few other definitions of because I think the sort of binary divide between, and yeah, we can look at fascism and whatnot, but the binary divide between communism and capitalism is the mistake. But we can look at other economic, somewhat market-based economies, and you can run them well or poorly, whatever they may be, and your society, not the global society, but your society can decide, hey, we want to set up a pension scheme for old people that we think either deserve to retire or simply, hey, they're getting too old to really work anymore. And a lot of the old people schemes are selfish, not just for the old people, but for the young people, because they want to just dump their their parents or grandparents care onto the state instead of them take care of it. Where the old, when now, of course, before modern medicine, people died a lot more, but so there were fewer older people to take care of. Quite true. But grandma or grandpa, as they're ending their later years, now they may still be mobile and coherent in the mind and all, but they're not going to be working hard out in the fields or something all day long. There were other jobs, watching the kids or other light work duties or whatever, and I'm talking like, the Middle Ages or something, other light duties for them to do. And that they were, community elders with lots of knowledge, even though they weren't going to get out and, move a bunch of heavy stuff around. But yeah, with more urban societies and whatnot, I'm not against the idea of various pension sort of schemes for the older folk. And I'm not, and having dealt with it particularly with my mother, because old people live so long, they can also live so long in a state that they need a lot of care. And maybe you don't want your, spend 6 hours a day taking care of your grandparent, something like that. Yeah, I know, but so yeah, there are reasons for modern, you know, schemes to deal with older people that are good. And, is that system run wisely, shall we say? And I think that depends as much on the people in the society, and in both individuals as well as the society as whole, is more important than the particular formula. And I'm still on all this, and we lose. There he goes again. That's why I stopped watching your videos. Yes, Europe is fucked up, but so is the U.S. Good evening. Okay, well, yeah, you don't have Stronghold fan. Yeah, I use this as a bit of therapy for myself, and hopefully, the history of the U.S. and the Middle East and what went wrong is a very interesting topic. Volker summed it up in a really good. Okay, so okay, don't know how we were in the Middle East and the U.S. But so I the and so this is, and I'm trying to formulate, and I'm using these, and I'm hoping for input from people like Folk and others who do want to engage with me, as to try to put into words what was lost. Is it the soul? Sort of metaphorically, the soul of society was lost in World War I, and we've yet to regain it. Soulless governments, governments by formula, governments by bureaucrats who are not accountable for the policies that they enforce, so that they don't lose their job, or they don't suffer if whether individuals or large groups of people are harmed by their policies. Where before I see it very differently. Well, you may argue Western Europe has declined because it's influenced by trends in the U.S. Eastern Europe, on the contrary, was not open to the U.S. and stays healthy. I definitely know that some of my friends that are Europeans, and some of them were very young when the Eastern Europe collapsed, and I know some of the specific people, but I don't want to put words in individuals' mouths, because partially I'll get it wrong, and partially I don't know how much they want their personal opinions broadcast out. Some of them look fondly back on the the pre-collapse of Eastern Europe. Oh, they're not communists, but man, things were better then, blah, 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 blah. And even one of them has definitely told me, no, my parents think it's much better now than it was, because they were adults back when it was under the communist rule, and may not agree with everything on the left. Now, how do I put this? Up until at least the 90s, I do not believe the U.S., the Americans, were pushing a detrimental viewpoint onto Europe. They were definitely pushing a freedom viewpoint, but I think America's negative pushing may start with the Clintons, but only just into Europe. and Western Europe, I see the decadence, the self-hatred, etc. in Europe, in Western Europe, as being a collective guilt against success, people. I do not think Poland and Hungary and Eastern Germany or Romania, to name some of the major ones, their societies feel guilt over the poor people in Africa or Latin America or the Middle East, or damn, life is just so easy. I feel guilty that my life is so easy that, and I look at the rest of the world and see how hard it is for them in many parts of the other world and feel guilt about it. I don't think the guilt trend was spread by Americans. I see the Western European collapse as being a guilt trend. That people have bought into the feeling of being guilty for their success. Now, whether that's because Eastern Europeans don't have the success, or Eastern Europeans were under such crushing dictatorships, or whatever you want to call it, that they're just happy to be free, and whatnot like that. I think modern leftism in the West is primarily guilt-based. Because if you go and look at poor communities, particularly that are rural in America, they are not left. Most of the activists in left are in academia and sort of upper middle class and upper class people that feel guilty over their lives and the sort of lack of challenge in their lives. I don't want to say meaningless, like their lives are meaningless or they see them as such. They may, but they don't have any need to succeed. And so they've adopted leftism because, when I was going to college and in the political science major that I was in, all the leftists wished, this was in the mid-late 80s, all the leftists wish it was the late 60s or the early 70s because they wanted to protest. They wanted to make the phony coffin and march around the campus and have signs about the death squads in El Salvador, or they wanted to find a cause. I knew these people, and I sat down and had long conversations at lunch and whatnot with these people. They wanted to have these revolutions, these protest movements, these things. But in the 80s, America, nobody cared because everything was fine. Nobody was getting upset. Oh, they might, not like something or other, whether domestically or internationally, but no one was upset to protest. And these leftists wanted that, harken back to the late 60s, 68, 69. Or 72 or whatever. They wanted these marches and these protests and get these people angry and riled up. It was more about the protests and the marches than changing society. And yes, I do see that the viewer count has gone down between the two services because of this, but I think this is what I feel like talking about right now. And so I think the left has tried to import problems, specifically trying to import problems, so that they can have their revolution. And I think that's in Europe as well as America. And I think it's more to do with success than it is to do with America or any one particular culture influencing back and forth between, you know, Europe or the United States or a particular European country over another European country. And so now I will also say in Eastern Europe, they directly have experienced that which the left in the West, or more Western countries, you know, Western Europe, the US, Canada, whatever, claims that they want to create. They've lived under communism. They don't even want to go back to it, even if it's done, air quotes, right. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They've experienced it enough and realized that, you know, even trying to do it right or even trying to do it in some other method, it's still going to be bad. It's just maybe how bad, is it going to be terrible or just bad, or is it going to be god awful? You know, how bad is it going to be? They don't want to have any part of it. And they look out, especially now that there is relatively free exchange of ideas and whatnot between the West and the former East Bloc. You go, they've always had it great, starting at the end of World War II, more or less. They've had it great out there. We want that. You know, so yeah, there are people that do in the East harken back, but to what was, but I think it's a rose-colored glasses, a you know, that kind of thing. Looking back, those that support, they or their families were the winners within communism. So yeah. Okay, I'm going to save this again, and we're going to continue here for a little bit more, because I don't remember right where we were at here. Okay, so let's look at this naval situation here. Right, we have subs here that are going to hurt us as much as help if we attack. These are also subs that they're coming at us with. Okay, motor torpedo boats. You're going to go into the, oh yes, you're going to go into the harbor. Now, that would be a mistake to do that. Okay, well, I think mostly we're going to try to just avoid contact here until we really get our act together and decide to try to move out. So we're just going to do that. Now out here, what we're going to do is we're going to come right to here. We're going to plant a mine right there, and then we're going to roll right back into port. Now, I saw an old, maybe like 10-year-old talk by Victor Davis Hanson on warfare. About an hour long, 50-minute, whatever long talk that he did. And he talked about the Western way of war, which he talked about it differently than Keegan did in his book on the Western. We're talking about the Western way of war. And he talked about how it was so successful, but when it was turned on itself in World War I particularly, but also World War II, how devastating it was. And folk mentioned that most of these governments agreed upon everything. Well, they didn't realize that this war was going to cause a collapse to their society. Now, their societies were going to change anyways because things evolve. And things will evolve faster when they're in contact with other things. Meaning, if you have an isolated village, it's going to very, very slowly change its culture. But if you have a same village that's on a major trade route, and I'm talking, pre-industrial world, it's going to change more quickly because people and ideas will move through it much more rapidly. If you have one visitor to your village per year of somebody from just 2 villages over versus, people carrying news, 10, 20 people a day coming through your village from various areas, could be pilgrims, if you were on a pilgrim trail, and pilgrims as in pilgrimages to different holy sites or whatever. You're gonna get more influences and changes. And obviously also the technological changes, which are changing societies. And had they been allowed to happen in a gradual thing like it happened in Britain, sure, you're going to have disruption, but it's going to generally be for the better. There may be bad periods in the technological change over time, but generally for the better. But with that World War I, the problem wasn't that World War I broke out. That wasn't the tragedy. The problem was that neither side was willing to not have complete victory. That was the problem. At least that's the problem in my estimation. And since they weren't willing to accept the idea that Britain got in the war, the public statement, it's not entirely the private one, but the public statement was because Belgium was invaded, so we can't quit until Belgium's liberated. And Russia couldn't accept a negotiated peace. And on and on and on. So nobody was willing to have that negotiated peace. That is the tragedy of the war. Yeah, I guess this would be a reasonable way to point it. More so, in my opinion, than the pointlessness, quote unquote, of the war. I think there were very good points for the war. I think the starting point. Can we bomb there? Yes, we will. Just a second. I hope my fighters are escorts are close enough to get involved. Okay, damaged a bit more than I like. Got to upgrade the German forces. Both lessen the casualties and hope that we fully win here. Okay, well, I think we'll just move up and attack. It's the idea of not being entrenched. Do move up. Yep, with the cavalry here, I think we will just... Oh, you guys can move in and entrench. Yes, that's good. Now, with World War II, and the Western Allies in particular, making the statement that, I forget which conference comes out of it, Casablanca or one of them, that the only acceptable solution is unconditional surrender of the enemy. I think they saw the behaviors, particularly of Germany and Japan, as being existential crises, and particularly Germany, meaning they didn't believe, and particularly the Germans, but they didn't believe that they could coexist with the Nazis. Whether correctly or not, they believed that if they allowed the Nazi regime to survive, that they would, in essence, be doomed. If not in this war, in the next war, in the war after that, and whatever else. It had to be snuffed out. Now, whether that's true or not, in both a practical sense or in a theoretical sense, in that, would the Nazis, in a negotiated settlement with the West, let's say, yeah, they were probably going to, take back Alsace-Lorraine and some little territory, border territories. Would they have withdrawn from the Netherlands and Belgium and, France properly withdrawn? And, oh, sure, there would be, treaty limitations to the size of the French army and the size of the British Navy or whatever, There would be some of these things out there. But would they have retreated back and then just allowed it to sit there and be there? Or would they have gotten hungry for more? Hitler definitely wanted to be going east. But would they have just gone east and 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 never pushed to the west? Never pushed into Scandinavia again? Never. And they saw this as an aggressive ideology, like the aggressive communist ideology that Marx, Lenin, and Stalin all shared, and presumably Stalin's successors would have shared, of world revolution. And it was just the pure exhaustion of World War II that kept the West from actively trying to take out communism, but especially with Churchill and the Iron Curtain speech, definitely would put out the idea that we were going to segregate off the communist world from the rest of the world and make it unacceptable. So they realized that. And so that this is an existential threat, both in World War II, where World War I was, in many cases, in most cases, it was boundary disputes. Austria was definitely pushing into the power vacuum of the collapsing of the Ottoman Empire and the chaotic elements of the Balkans, most assuredly. But then Serbia assassinates, and I like to use the modern term, in essence, vice president or primary successor or whatever to the Austrian throne, which is, rather big act of war. So, however much correctly you want to say that Austria is being an expansive power, and I don't try to say anybody was wrong for thinking that in those terms. Let's shift here. So this way we can upgrade these guys. I definitely put the Austrians as well, that's actually a fairly good attack. Okay, let's try. Yeah, one less core there. But I don't think the war was quote unquote pointless. The pointlessness was its continuation beyond. A reasonable point. That it was clear that there was a massive stalemate. It was clear that no, cancel. I'm going to move you up here to get better supply to properly reinforce you. You get to you PP. These guys got their butts kicked because they're just not that good. Soldiery. Here. They can do at least. Now here, let's see. Let's move you to the front here like that, and then we will do this. We got the artillery supporting. We can reinforce you. Well, let's move you up and entrench you. And I like the push, but and we will be a bit once we get a few more artillery shells saved up. We may push here now that we have two cores facing it. But it is setting on a primary supply source, so it's not starving, unfortunately. All right, out here on the Italian front. Okay, we have 5 shells. We have 1 shell there. Holiday punch? No, we've not. Well, we're winning the attrition of warfare. And that we are causing lots of losses for limited losses on our part. We're going to try to take out that French. Over. Notice much of the Italian front is occupied by French units. Looks like we can do this right now. Start. Do that for very little damage. There we go. Rated. Barrage there. You back. And you back. That would be nice, but we wouldn't be entrenched. But fortress. Okay, so I'm not moving up because I can't entrench. We weakened him pretty hard. Supply lines to Sweden, but I don't think I want to risk my fleet too much more in attacking it. Now, we have a better upgradable submarines. Let's see if we get through this without running into anybody. We did. Yay. It's regular cruise mode. Off the line. This turn. We try to see anybody. Get you out into the deep ocean. You did bump into somebody, but we are in good shape, so we're going to switch mode. We bumped into somebody. Oh, we bumped into somebody in the naval line this time. That was very damaging. Okay. Still heading out. Maybe we should head back, but we're heading out. Okay, new units. What do we have here? German detachment is the only thing new. Yeah, I think up here because we're expanding our lines, we're pushing into Russia. Pushing in. Let's move. No, is definitely on the plans to fall sometime, but we may need to, well, you know, just a detachment there. Let's move our artillery there. We may be able to deal with that. Purchasing units. Well, let's go over to Turkey. We're going to not purchase any new units. We're going to use those points for other things. Italy, just not enough things I want. Maritime bombers would be nice. Cores would be nice. Fighters. Yeah, well, let's see. Fighters. The bad fighters again. Yeah. Okay. So we now have a trade lane up with Finland. We I don't know. Don't know how much I want to risk the Navy going up against the Russians right now. Not that we're going to lose, but how much damage are we going to take, and is it worth it? I don't know. Okay. Upgrade you to infantry weapons level 2. So we do so with you. So we keep pushing there. Pushing, pushing, pushing. Okay, I think we're done for the turn. Let's give the turn to the Entente. "500 Sinn Féin members arrested after the British learn of plans for a rising." Austria-Hungary develops infantry warfare level 3. Empire develops infantry level weapons 1. Very good. So we're not getting anything that we could from Finland because it's blocked. Maybe we should. I don't know. Germany is doing fairly decently though. So remaining the Entente's turn. Left these guys there. Don't know how much. It's not. The guys in port. Yeah. At least they were able to shoot back. Gotta get those German fighters out of there. Upgrade them, I believe, to. I think we can do level 3 now. But either way, gotta get them out of there. They really left this big a gap open here? Or are they going to be moving in at the end of the turn to fill it? Well, good, they weaken themselves before our attack. Painful. Pull off from the front. Because if I just reinforce you, not upgrade you fighters, you will get slaughtered again. So I gotta get you off the front, where I can both reinforce and upgrade over time. They're filling in the line, I see that. Yes, nobody complains. French work to the south, strike for better conditions. Eight turns remaining. Leave that there. Now, I don't know if next weekend, if you want next Saturday. Tomorrow we'll be back playing War Thunder, hopefully with Arno and a few others. But next weekend, I don't know, do you want me to continue with World War I, or do you want me to play the new, greatly updated Manor Lords? They've done a massive update to that. So I don't know if you guys want to share opinions on that. I'm willing to go either way. Yes, 6, 7. Possibly. Arna, I don't know for sure. But yes, that's good for War Thunder tomorrow. But and Manor Lords Saturday, okay. Arno's a vote for Manor Lords. We will see. Anybody else voting? Maybe I should put a poll up. Yeah, I'll do that this week. For next weekend. Put a poll up on the YouTube channel. So if you guys want to come over and vote on that, once it's up, we can do that. So thanks, folk. Thanks. I know Stronghold fan does not like my talk, but thanks for at least checking me out. General Sorrow, I know, is gone. Mirror Man, if you're still around, thank you. And I think IKB is off driving somewhere because he got his car working, so yes. And Arno says soup. Okay, yes, Arno's about as coherent as normal. All right, so thank you all, and see you tomorrow, I hope.